Picture a boy of 10 dragging wet sand out of a riverbed for a few coins, in a village almost no one outside Cameroon could find on a map. That boy had no shoes for the long road to the city, no money, and no plan beyond a single word: out. Today, his name carries real weight across an entire country, and people will swear to you that he owns half of it. That is a huge stretch, and we are going to be honest about that shortly. But the truth sitting underneath the myth is somehow even stranger, because Francis Ngannou really did build something enormous back home. It is just not the sort of empire you can outline on a map. This is the story of what the hardest hitting man in combat sports is actually building across his homeland. Let me take you to the village of Bati in the green highlands of western Cameroon. That is where Francis Ngannou was born on the 5th of September 1986, the fourth of 5 children in a family that had next to nothing. School never suited him. He left it early, and by the age of 10 he was working beside grown men in the sand mines, digging and hauling for money that barely stretched to food. The dirt roads, the red soil, the plain houses of Bati, that was the whole of his world, and it was a world he ached to get out of. So eventually he did the thing that takes equal parts desperation and hope. He left. A teenager walking toward Douala, the crowded economic capital on the coast, hoping the big city held something his village never could. For years he lived rough on the streets of Douala. Gangs circled. Quick money through illegal work was always an arm's length away. He kept saying no. He was carrying an unlikely picture in his head for a poor kid from the highlands. He wanted to be a professional boxer, and in 2012, at 25 years old, he made the most dangerous gamble of his life. He left Cameroon altogether, pushing through desert and sea toward Europe, risking everything for a sport he had barely begun to learn. That journey almost ended him. When he finally reached Paris, he was homeless all over again, sleeping wherever he could. But a coach at a local gym looked at the giant who had drifted in off the street and saw something nobody else had, and what that coach spotted would eventually rearrange the entire heavyweight division. Because the moment Francis Ngannou pulled on a pair of gloves, the world learned fast what all those years in the sand mines had quietly built. The man hit like a moving vehicle. We are talking about punching power that has actually been measured and compared to the force of a small car at speed. He arrived in the UFC, the biggest stage in mixed martial arts, and started switching off the lights on people in a matter of seconds. The highlight clips from those nights in the Las Vegas cage look almost staged. Heavyweights, some of the toughest human beings alive, dropping as if the floor had been yanked away beneath them. Then came the night that rewrote his life. In March of 2021, Ngannou captured the UFC heavyweight title and became the first African heavyweight champion in the company's history. For a continent of more than 1 billion people, that belt was far bigger than a sporting prize. The kid from Bati, the boy from the sand mines, was now the most feared man in the building. He had climbed to the very top of his sport. Most fighters, once they reach that peak, cling to it with everything they have. They re-sign, they cash the checks, they defend until the body quits. Ngannou did the opposite. He walked away. And understanding why he walked is the key that opens this whole empire story. You see, Ngannou had spent years watching how the fight business really operates. The promoters grow rich. The fighters take a slice, then get cast aside once the knees give out. He had lived his entire life on the losing end of deals other people designed. So, when his UFC contract ran out, he refused to simply sign again for a fatter paycheck. He wanted the thing fighters almost never get: ownership. He wanted equity, a seat at the table, and the freedom to box for serious money on the side. UFC would not hand him that. So in 2023 he shocked the sport and signed instead with the Professional Fighters League, the rival promotion, in a deal built around equity and a genuine say in how the business is run. Plenty of people called it madness. They said he was abandoning the biggest stage in the sport for a smaller one. But Ngannou was no longer chasing the biggest stage. He was building one of his own. Which brings us to the first real pillar of this so-called Cameroon empire. Because folded inside that Professional Fighters League agreement was the piece that mattered to him most. He did not just sign on as a fighter. He became a minority equity owner and the chairman of a brand new league, PFL Africa. Think about what that really means. A continental mixed martial arts league, staged across African nations with a true season, playoffs and a championship, designed to take young African fighters and hand them a global platform for the first time. And the man chairing it, holding an ownership stake in it, is the sand mine kid from Bati. The project drew serious backing, including investment from the Africa-focused firm Helios, and it officially launched in 2025. This is not charity. This is Francis Ngannou positioning himself as both a gatekeeper and an owner of the entire pipeline of African combat sports talent. Every young fighter in Lagos or Nairobi or Yaoundé who dreams of making it now has a door to walk through that he helped build and partly owns. If you are enjoying this look at how a fighter turned himself into a continental power broker, take a second to subscribe. We break down the business empires behind the world's biggest athletes every single week. Now let us get to the second pillar, and this one is far more personal. Long before the league, long before the PFL deal, Ngannou was already channeling money back into the red soil of Bati through the Francis Ngannou Foundation. He registered it in 2018 in both Cameroon and the United States. And here is the part that catches people off guard. For years, that foundation ran almost entirely on his own money. No giant corporate sponsors propping it up, no government behind it. Just a fighter taking his purses and his sponsorship checks and sending them home. The mission is simple, and it traces straight back to his own childhood. He builds gyms and training centers for young people in Cameroon, places where a poor kid with nowhere to turn can learn boxing, judo and wrestling, the same combat sports that pulled him out of the mines. Around the gyms sit education and community programs aimed squarely at the kind of village child Ngannou himself once was. Stand inside one of those facilities in the Cameroonian highlands, and the word empire starts to mean something different. He is not buying up land to get richer. He is putting down institutions. He is trying to make sure the next sand mine kid has somewhere to walk in and train, rather than a cold corner to sleep in. Which leads to the third pillar, and this is the one the clickbait headlines are really straining toward: the soft power, the influence. In Cameroon, Ngannou is not simply an athlete. He is a national symbol, arguably the most globally famous person the country has ever produced. A man who climbed from its poorest corners to magazine covers and main events in Saudi Arabia. When he speaks, the country listens. When he comes home, it is an event. That kind of standing is a form of power no amount of money can just buy off a shelf. Politicians want to stand next to him. Brands want his face. A whole generation of young Cameroonians sees its own way out, written into his story. So now we can deal with the headline honestly. Does Francis Ngannou own half of Cameroon? No. Let us be completely clear. There are no secret deeds, no stranglehold on the nation's businesses, no sprawling estates stamped with his name. In fact, measured against other global superstar athletes, his actual net worth is fairly modest, with most estimates landing somewhere between $15 and $20 million. That is a serious amount of money, but it is nowhere near a fortune that buys a country. The line about owning half the place is exaggeration, pure and simple, the kind of thing spoken out of pride and hype rather than fact. But here is why that exaggeration exists at all. It exists because his footprint feels far larger than anything he holds on paper. He owns a stake in the league that will shape African mixed martial arts for a generation. He owns the foundation physically building gyms across his homeland. And he owns something harder still to put a price on, the role of being the proof, the living evidence that an African kid from absolutely nothing can conquer the world and then turn around and lift others. That mix is why people keep reaching for the word empire, not because of acres, because of influence. So where does all of this head next? The plan stretches well beyond Ngannou the fighter. PFL Africa is meant to keep running long after he stops competing, producing champions and creating jobs across the continent in coaching, promotion, and broadcasting. The foundation is meant to keep growing, ideally drawing in the outside partners and global fundraising he has started to chase, so it no longer leans on his purses alone. And the symbol only gets bigger every time another African fighter he helped put on a stage lifts a belt above their head. The boy who hauled sand for coins in Batier did not come home to buy his country. He came home to build something inside it, a league he co-owns, a foundation he funds, and a legend that opens doors money simply cannot. That is the real empire. It is just not the one the headline promised you. So here is the thought worth sitting with. Years from now, when those gyms are full and PFL Africa has crowned 100 champions, will Francis Ngannou be remembered as a great fighter who got rich, or as the man who quietly rebuilt the future of an entire continent's combat sports from the ground up? That is what we want to hear from you. Where do you land on it? Drop your take in the comments, and if you want more real stories from the world of fighting, the money, the legacies, and the truth behind the headlines, hit subscribe and stick around. We have a new one for you every single week.